Hi, everyone. It's Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of Explicitly Pro-Life Podcast. As you know, we are in season 3, having difficult conversations. And we've been having a lot of conversations this season, and we'll continue to do so. But today I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to talk to you about pro-life movies, because I have found that movies are a great way to have a difficult conversation with someone, because you can outsource that difficult conversation by referring them to a movie or watching a movie with them. So joining me on this podcast is the resident expert in all things pro-life movies, Jason Jones, the founder of Movie Movement. Thanks, Jason, for coming on.
Aloha, and thank you for having me on.
Well, if you all saw Jason or watched us in the previous season, we did a kind of a big episode on can you be pro-life and vote for pro-abortion candidates. That was a pretty intense episode. So if you get mad at Jason or I during the episode, I'm sure this one won't make you angry. How about that?
It might. I'll try to do my best to make someone upset with some of my movie selections.
All right. So we're going to talk about the top pro-life movies and the top pro-abortion movies that you need to watch that will stir up conversations, help you have hard conversations. And then we're going to give you some homework. Jason actually has homework for us about movies that we as pro-life activists need to watch. And he's going to tell us why. And he started telling me about all of these things the other day. And I was like, we need to do a podcast on them. If you all don't know Jason, you should check out Movie to Movement, movieToMovement.com. He's the producer of Crescendo, the new film Divided Hearts of America, the preeminent pro-life movie, the first big pro-life movie to ever hit the mainstream media, which was Bella. He's won all sorts of movie awards as a humanitarian. He's used film to promote the plight of the most vulnerable. So he's awesome. You should follow him on social media. All right, let's go into this. Best pro-life films to watch. So let's go through what would you recommend be the regimen of pro-life film watching for a Students for Life club, or just a new pro-lifer who wants to really watch every pro-life film?
Well, that question is, why do we watch films, or why do we tell stories and listen to stories? And I think it's to inspire empathy. Especially those of us who are in the pro-life movement or when we're students. I can tell you, when I was a college student, my big blind spot was my lack of empathy. I knew my abortion story. I knew abortion was a sore subject with me, but I assumed that I did never assume that the other people around me had had abortions. And so I could maybe not be as thoughtful as I should have been with my use of words. So I would say when we're looking for movies for us as activists, it's not to inspire us to choose life, but maybe to give us empathy for young women who are in these crisis pregnancies. And so then I would have to shamelessly say that Bella is the very first movie that every pro-lifer should watch, because Alejandro Monteverdi, our writer-director, did such a good job of allowing Nina, Tammy Blanchard's character, Nina, to share and you experience with her as somebody who was involved in 3 teen pregnancies. It did a good job of helping to capture sort of the fear and the loneliness and the despair that young women and young men, what happens to us when we find ourselves in an unexpected teen pregnancy. So Bella is where I would start.
Yeah, I think Bella is an excellent movie, and also broaches, adoption in a way that I think is very thoughtful. So Bella for sure. What would be, and where can you watch Bella? I guess.
Well, Bella is pretty much everywhere. It's on Amazon. It's on Netflix. It's on Hulu. It's on, it rotates on and off of Netflix. It's always available on Amazon. And another great place, you laughed at me when I said this to us the other day. One of my favorite places to go for movies is, what did I say and you laughed? Do you remember?
I don't know. Oh,
the library.
Library. Because I was like, I don't even know where my library is, but yes.
So
okay.
I am usually, it's me and other homeless people. It's, people don't use libraries anymore other than for shelter. But I love our local libraries. I spend a lot of time in them and write in them. Also, you can find movies that you can't even order on Amazon. Like one of the movies I'm going to recommend, you would have to buy on Amazon. It's $50 and you can't download it. But I guarantee you you can get it from your local library. So libraries are a great place to go. But because I make money off of Bella, I would hope that you actually purchase it on Amazon or wherever you buy your DVDs.
Shameless plug, not so shameless.
Yeah.
All right. So I think Bella's a great movie. I think it's a great movie for you as a pro-life activist to kind of really put yourself in her shoes and what goes on in that moment of crisis. But I think it's also a great movie for pro-choice friends to witness that and to see the decision-making process. Second movie, I would say, would be Amazing Grace. I really love that story, the story of William Wilberforce.
I would have never, it's in my list of movies that every activist should watch. So I wouldn't have given it for a pro. Yes, but to me, Amazing Grace is something all activists should watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, how can you, I mean, as a pro-lifer, when you watch the film, and obviously they're not talking about abortion at all, but when you're watching this film, the entire time you're thinking about our struggle here in the United States to end legal abortion, and the same arguments that were made and the same tactical discussions that we've had in the pro-life movement, and you kind of see them being living out in the life of William Wilberforce. I think that it's an amazing film. It will inspire you as a pro-lifer to keep going. I know that's one of the questions that we often get at Students for Life is, how do you avoid burnout? How do you keep your motivation high despite all the setbacks that we face? And I think it's just having this unrelentless drive and this grittiness to just keep moving forward. And I think when you think of that, you can think of William Wilberforce and his life and the sacrifices that he made. All right, what's your next?
Can I tell you something else what I liked about that film?
Yeah.
You remember when he sort of, God told him his mission was to end slavery, and he was young and he was rolling around in the grass and he was giddy. I know my purpose in life. And his friend thought he was nuts. But then we see how quickly he ages and how long and hard the struggle was. And I think that's something that people in the young people in the pro-life movement need to understand. When I saw that movie now, I think 20 years ago, almost, even then, and I was 20 or 15, 16 years younger than I am now, I felt like I was in the movement forever. And I'd been out of college for a decade. And I remembered how, as a young activist, how enthusiastic I was. And when I saw that scene and how the film ends, I remember thinking, this is going to be a long, hard struggle, and I will be diminished in the struggle. Something else I loved about that film was the diversity of the abolitionists. You had the Jacobin that always smelled of booze, who was kind of an angry pessimist. You had William Wilberforce, who not only wanted to end slavery, the slave trade, but he wanted to reform morals and manners. So you had one guy that smelled like whiskey and he was a womanizing Jacobin. And on the other hand, you had this diverse coalition. The pro-life movement, and really in large part thanks to you, Students for Life, and your generation, there was a time where I, as a young atheist, was the diversity in the pro-life movement. Like, bring that atheist kid. I'm a Catholic now, but then bring the atheist kid up. Blonde hair, blue-eyed atheist, that was our diversity. But sort of with the millennials and Gen Z and social media, we see now this flowering diversity of all sorts of folks with all sorts of ideas and cultures, but that are committed to protecting the child in the womb from violence. And that can cause trouble, right? There's conflicts, or there can be. That's you see all of that in Amazing Grace. You
do. You're talking about how he started this battle as a young man and the joy that he had. I think you see that all the time at the pro-life march in Washington, D.C., and you always see this joy of young pro-lifers who are there rallying for this morose, anniversary, that the day we recognize and remember the 16 million that we've lost, yet you have these joyful, smiling faces because so many know that this is their calling, this is their mission in life. And there's a great William Wilberforce quote we always put at the top of our Students for Life newsletters. If you don't get our newsletter, you can just sign up on our website. But it's, we are too young to realize that certain things are impossible, so we will do them anyway.
That's I think my favorite lines. I love it. Yeah.
That pretty much sums us up. All right. So we have Bella, Amazing Grace. What would be your next kind of pro-life film, pro-life movie folks should watch, should recommend to friends to watch?
Can I give you a double feature?
Okay, give me a double feature.
By the way, with Amazing Grace, I think you should also watch Spike Lee's Malcolm X. Because, Malcolm X's father was murdered by the Klan, cut in half across a trolley track. And sort of Malcolm X, believe it or not, Malcolm X and William Wilberforce have very similar journeys, heroes' journeys. So I think they're two good films to watch. By the way, both of them were pro-life. Malcolm X and William Wilberforce were both pro-life. So my next double feature, I think that you should do that as a double feature. Then my next double feature would be a Diablo Cody marathon. You should watch Juno and then Young Adult. And those two films together are beautiful. And so many of Diablo Cody's films touch on abortion. But when you watch Young Adult, after you watch Juno, I think Diablo as a writer is telling us a lot, and about her own experiences. I think she's very revealing. I won't say what I think she reveals, but you can watch them yourself. But I would say Juno and Young Adult. What do you say about that?
I think that's very good. I mean, I think Juno was on my list of like the unintentional pro-life movie. It was this mainstream movie and it kind of got everywhere. It was everywhere. You could get it at a Blockbuster. I'm aging myself, I know. You saw it at the movie theater, but then it had this incredible pro-life message to it. And I think it was great. And I know you had some like backstory and behind the scenes that you can't really talk about.
Well, I can say, no, not about this film, but I can say this about Diablo. She's from my neighborhood where I grew up. And, she wrote a book called Candy Girl about her working in the sex industry as a writer also for radio stations in Minneapolis. And she had changed her name to Diablo. She wrote in that book, Candy Girl. I think that was the title. It's been 20 years since I read it. But it's sort of about how she kind of wanted to suffer. So I read into it that Juno is her story. Juno is very much like her in personality-wise. And except she didn't choose life. That's what I'm taking from that. And when you watch Young Adult, it seems to be the second half of that story. But what's so beautiful about Young Adult is I think Leo Strauss in his book, which everyone should read, Persecution in the Art of Writing, especially in the age of mass censorship, Leo Strauss writes on how we can dissemble or how we can speak between the lines. And Diablo, there's that powerful scene where Juno's walking into the abortion clinic and the young girl who has perfect English except for when she writes her sign. And which to me was Diablo being clever, trying to throw off the studios. But she said to Juno, don't you know your baby has fingernails? And Juno stops and says, fingernails? Huh. And to me, that was an example of speaking between the lines. And then, of course, Juno chooses life. But there's so many examples of that in Juno. I think the writer Diablo Cody is speaking through the lines. Another example would be in her movie Young Adult, which is about. Have you seen Young Adult?
Nope.
Oh, you've got to see Young Adult. It's about a young adult fiction writer who is from Minneapolis, or she's from a small Minnesota town, but to her small town friends, she's now the big city girl because she lives in the Minneapolis, the little New York, Minneapolis. And she gets a fax, I think, of all things, from her high school, college sweetheart that he's having a baby shower with his wife. So she goes back to her small town with the idea she's going to win him back after like 20 years. And at this party, the climax of the party, she says, we were in love. This should have been mine. I could have had this first. Then she spills sangria across her womb. And so this red sangria is dripping down. And she says, because I got pregnant. And then there's 3 beats. Beat, beat, beat. I had a miscarriage. Now, I believe that she probably originally wrote abortion. And her manager, agent, or the producer like, no, you can't say that. So what Diablo did, which was so clever, is she put in those 3 beats. Now, this is where it gets weird. You're going to think, Jason, are you remembering this right? Yes, because I saw it at the theater 3 times. When you heard in the space of those 3 beats, when she said, I had a what? What do you think a young unmarried college student, when she said, but I had a what? In those 3 beats, everyone in the world, abortion went in their mind. What they did is they edited out the beats for the DVD VOD release.
Interesting.
Unbelievable that you can't even dissemble a pro-life message with the studios. So, but Diablo outsmarted them. So I believe that she's very pro-life, and so many of her in her TV and movies. There's so many messages celebrating the dignity of the child in the womb, and also the pain that abortion inflicts on women.
Yeah, I have never watched it. I'm definitely going to check it out now. And this would be good for you if you're leading a Students for Life group or have a local Right to Life group. You could actually make these like Zoom movie nights where you can, I think on Zoom, I know some of our Students for Life groups have been kind of have shared movie nights where someone shares their screen, watches it, and you guys can be having a conversation while the movie's going on if you're still in like COVID restrictive mode where you are. I think that's a great idea. What about some other pro-life films? We talked about some double features, Amazing Grace, Malcolm X, Juno, Young Adult, which I have to go check out now. And I need to write this down before I forget. What about another movie that you've made that's a short film?
Well, Crescendo, I think, is the most beautiful short film ever made. And again, we made Crescendo to be a pillar to the dignity of the child in the womb and to the struggles of mothers in those difficult positions, that we wanted to transcend culture and time. And it's free on YouTube. And we also allow any and all groups to license it at no cost. If you need something for your university, we can send you something saying you're licensed to show it. But we've made it available to the public. Sometimes, I've famously said I don't believe in pro-life apologetics, right? Because
that film is pro-life apologetics.
Well, it's storytelling, right? But a lot of folks who are into pro-life apologetics will say, hey, they criticize the film Crescendo, and they'll say, what you're saying is Beethoven's, is valuable because he's Beethoven. That's not what we're saying, obviously, right? We're just telling a story that happens to be true to show that when we're in difficult situations, which all crisis pregnancies seem to be, but then in retrospect, really they're not. I mean, I can say that as somebody who I had a son at 18 and a daughter at 19, as a high school dropout, working night shifts and was an infantryman and doing all I had to do. In retrospect, it wasn't hard. It seemed hard to a pampered, decadent world. It's just life, and I'm grateful for it all. But what we wanted to show is, Beethoven's mother actually was going through severe hardship. And she was in an abusive situation with a very bad man as her husband. But she came through and she chose life. And of course, the most beautiful thing about her choice isn't the music of Beethoven. It's that creature made in the image of God that's Beethoven. But that's why we make movies, to inspire empathy, to tell stories, to lead people to the truth. I was obsessed with logic and argument and debate until I saw a movie, which we'll get to, as a college student that changed my whole life. It changed how I wanted to do what I felt called to do. I went from being a logic TA to wanting to be involved in media because of a French film I saw in 1996, which we'll get to. But that's the goal of Crescendo. And that's something you guys use it. And if you want DVDs, email me. I'll give you as many free DVDs as you need. They're there for you.
That's awesome. I love Crescendo because it answers that hard question that you often get as a pro-life activist. And I think it's something that if you're going to have a movie night on that, especially if you're doing it in person or Zoom, invite every pro-choice friend you have to join and watch, and then have a real discussion about the film. And it's only 15 minutes. It's a short film, but it's a high quality. My struggle in the pro-life movement is I get sent books, videos, music, flags, all kinds of things that are like pro-life. And then I'm so critical about, the quality that we're putting out, to make sure that every time we make a film that we say it's pro-life, it is the top, the highest quality that a film can be had right at this moment, because I think it gets judged extra than any other film. So I think Kristan is a great film. That's a great film, especially to invite somebody who's on the fence to watch and listen and have a conversation with, especially since it's so short. It's beautiful. Movies about the abortion industry. How do you feel about Gosnell and Unplanned, the Abby Johnson story? I mean, Gosnell, I think, was on Netflix. Something similar like that. Unplanned was in movie theaters for a short amount of time. What do you think about these films? I feel like they're kind of like the acting. It's kind of like Lifetime movie. It kind of feels like a Lifetime movie, I feel like.
You know who was the CNN reporter in Gosnell, right?
I know. I was invited to be an extra too. You always use that. Like, you're an extra in Gosnell. I was invited. I was just too lazy to go to Oklahoma.
Well, but you're saying that I was like a Lifetime extra. I think I was like a big movie extra. I feel like I was like a Jurassic Park extra. I feel I did my job.
You did your job very well. And I thought the movie was great. In fact, at the end of Gosnell, you see Students for Life banner. And because the makers of Gosnell wanted to recognize, because Students for Life was there during the hearing, during the trial, and we were there protesting in Philadelphia. So I was very grateful that they included us in that. But I think these are really important movies because they really get into like just the true violence of the abortion industry, what really goes on. How do you feel about these movies, in terms of having a conversation, sparking a conversation with someone in your life who might be pro-life? Do you think not pro-life? Do you think that these would be effective movies to watch with them, or to show them, or refer them to?
Yeah, I mean, let me say this about both Gosnell and Unplanned. They were, when we judge, a lot of times we watch a lot of low budget films, right? I just did a Kung Fu marathon with my wife, watching all these Jackie Chan movies over a couple of months. We watched every Jackie Chan film. But we judge our own films harshly when they have a lower budget. But we have to understand, and I'll say this about Gosnell and Unplanned, brilliant filmmaking. Mm-hmm. When you look at what the budget they had.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, startlingly beautiful, great storytelling, wonderful direction and acting. Gosnell, I was the CNN reporter. You see me half the movie because I'm right behind Gosnell. I'm like this extra that's hogging. I'm like, what's her name? Phoebe in Friends, where she's an extra. You remember that? Where she's an extra, she's in every scene. But as I was sitting there watching the court trial, I really did forget that I was on a movie set. And as the nurse was testifying, I began to cry. And I'm thinking, CNN reporters don't cry. I'm the worst extra ever. So Gosnell is very powerful. Mm-hmm. Let's say this about Unplanned. I actually was in the running to produce on Abby's story. And when Chuck and Carrie got the funds together and went to Abby, I encouraged Abby to go with them, because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, I think, as the saying goes.
Sure, whatever. I still don't get it.
I said, I'd go with them.
Oh, yeah.
But I knew in my mind, I'm like, I would do a better job. But no, I wouldn't have. What they did, I would have never had the courage to do, as someone who's been in the movement for so long. They showed an abortion. They showed two abortions. Mm-hmm. And I would have never done that. I would have never had the courage to do that. And it was such the right decision, especially the chemical abortion.
That is the most powerful scene and Chuck and Carrie, the producers of Unplanned, actually have given Students for Life the rights to that scene where we've been showing it on campuses. We made it into like a short clip that we put on Facebook. It got like millions of views. We put no money behind it, just put it on Facebook one weekend this April, actually. Tens of millions of views. That scene of the chemical abortion, especially as we go in, as we're, just starting off 2021, chemical abortion is going to be the battleground of the pro-life movement, because the abortion industry, this is what they want. They want to close down the brick and mortars. They're too expensive. There's protesters. They have to pay to dispose of the bodies. Chemical abortion is the way for them to go. That's how they're going to make the most money. And they're conning women into believing that chemical abortions are somehow easier, gentler. In fact, they're extremely painful. They're lonely. They can take weeks to complete, to end the life of the child. 5 to 15% of those abortions don't actually even end up discarding the human being, so that the woman still has to go through a surgical abortion. She can I could go on and on of just about chemical abortion. In fact, I think I have a whole podcast episode just about chemical abortion. But that scene of Unplanned, like I remember they called me because they asked me, should we take this out of the movie before it goes to the movie theater? Because when they were screening it to all the donor types, they had people pass out at the screenings because it's so gory. And I was like, please, whatever you do, do not cut that scene out. Because for me, and for what we do at Students for Life, that's the most powerful scene in the movie, that chemical abortion scene.
Yeah, and it is. I think what makes it so powerful for us is because of what we do. So many people tell us about their chemical abortion stories, and it perfectly synced with what I heard so many of my friends tell me they went through. And so Abby is our friend. So as I was watching that, I was just broke down because my friend went through that. So many of my friends went through that. And they all thought that was just them. And they're always told, oh, that's strange. That's not usual. No, that's normal. That's really what happens. And I think Unplanned and Gosnell, yes, everyone needs to watch both those films and share them as much as possible. And for student clubs, you know, really can do now. There have been so many pro-life films. And I don't like that term pro-life. You know, I say I'm not a pro-life filmmaker. I try to make films that tell the truth about the beauty of the human person and to inspire solidarity with the vulnerable. I'm not making commercials, but I want to tell stories that reveal the truth about the human person. And both Gosnell and Unplanned do that in such a powerful way. And they're brilliant. It's brilliant filmmaking as well.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, just when you're talking, it reminded me, we actually at Students for Life just released a 70-page digital book you can download for free. It's thisischemicalabortion.com. Because this summer during the COVID shutdowns, we started going into pregnancy center chat rooms, having conversations. We've saved several babies, dozens of babies, just by our own team going into pregnancy center chat rooms, having conversations. But what we unintentionally found were women who had undergone chemical abortions are going to these pregnancy chat rooms and fully giving up details about the horrific nature of their abortion, specifically the chemical abortion. So
not even in the movement. They're saying, don't do it.
These are women who probably might even still call themselves pro-choice, but talk about the horrific nature of their chemical abortion. And they're going to these chat rooms to tell other women, don't be fooled, don't do this. And we collected all of these stories just unintentionally. We stumbled upon all of these stories this summer in a book, and we're distributing to members of Congress. But you can get it. I would totally encourage you. It's totally free. Thisischemicalabortion.com. Okay, more movies. Let's talk more about the kind of in the Juno, young adult, those unintentional mainstream movies that have a really significant message, a strong talking point for the pro-life movement. I mean, we TV, there's lots of examples. I think you remarked earlier before we started filming, South Park is a pro-life organization.
South Park is my favorite pro-life organization.
After Students for Life of America, Jason.
Yeah, South Park is my second favorite.
So one movie that I think about, and I think I actually own this on DVD, is Knocked Up. That movie where, you know, it's an unplanned pregnancy, it's a one-night stand. There's a conversation between the men about some mismortion. They wouldn't even say the word abortion in the movie, and if he should have a mismortion. It's a beautiful. I think it's a pretty good movie of the chaos that would and does ensue after a one-night stand results in the creation of a new human life, and understandably. Any thoughts on Knocked Up?
Look, when I speak, I start naming. I always tell people Hollywood is anti-abortion. I'm not saying it's pro-life, but the stories they tell are anti-abortion, and I'll start naming them. And I ask people who raise their hand. I'll name all the movies. And I say Knocked Up last. And like one person will kind of do this, and I'll be like, go to confession. But look, Knocked Up is a wild movie.
It is.
Don't tell your parents I'm telling you to go see it.
It's fine. It's to save the babies. It's for a good cause.
Watch it when it's on Lifetime. If you're in college, I don't know. But Knocked Up, my kids, I won't let them watch it till they're 27. But I think it's the best. It is amazing. It's got such a sense of life, such a joy of life. Well, it deals with the struggles. Again, I see a little dissembling. I think that the writer was pro-life. I mean, they wouldn't say the word, smashmortion. And you have a woman who gets her dream job, who gets knocked up by the world's biggest loser, who is a pothead, unemployed, but he has big dreams. He wants to be a tabloid pornography website developer. He wants to take basically, videos of celebrities that are leaked and put them all in one place. So the world's biggest loser, and this woman with everything to lose gets pregnant from this guy. On a one-night stand, she's willing to sacrifice her career for that life. It's such a powerful film. It's funny, and again, it has it's not heavy. It's a roller coaster, but it has a beautiful sense of life.
You're right. Absolutely. I like it, and it's funny, and it made me laugh several times. So that always is a good thing. All right. So you mentioned a couple other movies, Waitress, Sarah's Key. What are these movies?
Yeah, Waitress, Sarah's Key is amazing. So let's do Waitress. Waitress, it's really a sorrowful story. The writer, who's also acts in it, she got pregnant and she couldn't bring herself to have an abortion. She felt like a bad feminist because she couldn't have an abortion. She felt like a bad mother because she didn't want to have a baby. And she wrote this script to sort of grapple with that. Sadly, after the movie came out, a few weeks after, I think it was at Toronto, she was murdered in Central Park. Yeah. So this movie was really just a beautiful gift to her child, her daughter's in the movie, with Kerry Russell, who's also in August Rush. So August Rush and Waitress maybe it would be a good double feature watch together. But what I love about the film is, and you can YouTube her singing. There's this beautiful song she sings while she makes her pies. Baby, don't you cry, baby, don't be blue. Mama's making a pie with a heart in the middle, something like that. And every time she's making these pies, because she makes these wonderful pies, and she's pregnant by a husband who is kind of cruel and abusive, and she ends up having an affair in the middle of her pregnancy. But she's making these pies and she's singing this song every time she makes a pie. But when she talks, she tells people she doesn't want this kid. She tells everyone she doesn't want this kid. But when she makes her pies, she sings the song, baby, don't you cry, baby, don't be blue. Mama's making a pie with a heart in the middle. Well, one of the most powerful scenes in Hollywood history is when her baby is born, she sings this song to her baby. You realize she was never singing that song to her pies. She was pregnant. She was singing to the child in her womb. The way she looks at her child, as I can tell you when I was a teen parent and I cut my son's umbilical cord, it captures it perfectly. And she's telling everyone she doesn't want this kid, but when she holds this kid, she says, oh my God. Oh my God. Then she sings the song, baby, don't you cry, baby, don't be blue. And each of her pies is unlike any other pie she ever made. So it's sort of like a parable of the human person, is each and every human being is unique and has an incomparable dignity. Again, there's a lot of hair in the soup. This is not Christian movie review time. This is a film from the world that tells the truth, written by a woman struggling with what did it mean to be a feminist, what did it mean to be pro-abortion, what did it mean to be pregnant, and all these things she was grappling with. It came out so powerfully in this film, Waitress, which I believe was on Broadway prior to the shutdown as well. Sarah's Key is another film that sort of connects the culture of death that we're battling today, the culture of abortion, to the Holocaust. Again, you call unintentionally pro-life. It's a film that tells a story, and the story reveals really the sorrow and horror of the culture of death and how intimately it is connected to the ideologies of evil that ravaged the 20th century. Sarah's Key is the type of film you're going to want to watch one night. alone. And then it might lead into the films I have, which I wish every activist would watch.
All right, okay, couple more pro-life films, or
Okay.
unintentionally pro-life films. One that I saw was our team recommended was A Quiet Place, that the eyeless monster movie, the horror movie with John Krasinski from The Office.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is, what you can't make any noise. If you make noise, you'll be eaten alive. Yet, in spite of this, they decide to have a baby, and that's the one. A baby obviously is going to make noise. And that's the one thing that you can't do. And so I've never watched it because I was too afraid to watch it.
Okay.
But it sounds like an unintentional pro-life movie. What about August Rush? You mentioned that as part of a double feature with Waitress?
Yes. So August Rush is sort of a fairy tale. It seems to be like a fairy tale of post-abortion healing. Mm-hmm. Carrie Russell gets pregnant as a young girl. She's a musician, and she is forced to have an abortion. But it's sort of this fantasy sequence that she does have a child out there, and that the man is still out there, and that they all find each other. So it's sort of like the loss that everyone involved in an abortion sort of grapples with. Mm. How could you unravel? How could you hit the rewind button? How could everything be right again? So to me, August Rush, written by a friend of mine's, I need to get a hold of the writer because I have a good friend who went to school with the writer. But I'm thinking when you watch it, this writer knew what he was doing, and what he wanted to write was a film that would be edifying to people who were suffering from the sorrow of abortion. Mm-hmm. It just seems that's what it does so well, that it's so brilliant and beautifully written. August Rush, anyone who's post-abortive, I think, can watch it. But yeah, it's a very beautiful, very unique film, unlike anything you've ever seen.
All right, and that also has Carrie Russell in it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so double feature for your club. All right, before we get to the homework, let's go over some pro-abortion movies that are obviously made with the intention to promote abortion, which is interesting because there was an article after Knocked Up came out. There were several articles that came out in Hollywood criticizing Hollywood for being too pro-life. And I remember reading this one article of why can't we make abortion funny? Like that was literally like the crux of the article, that the abortion industry was angry that Hollywood wasn't making funny abortion movies, which is why there was a big write-up this summer in the Washington Post, like Style. It was like one of the Sunday editions of this director of the Planned Parenthood, like Hollywood Center. And so Planned Parenthood now has like a full-time team of people who are there in Hollywood. They work with Shonda Rhimes, all those people who put abortion in their shows to make sure they're being medically accurate, the language that they're using to describe abortions. But their whole goal at Planned Parenthood, this kind of movies institute they have, is to impact Hollywood and to get Hollywood to talk more about abortion, to try to normalize abortion, because Hollywood recognize that Hollywood for so long has been doing really unintentional or intentional pro-life filmmaking. So I think their first one was, from recent memory, was Obvious Child. I always sometimes call it Oblivious Child, but it was like supposed to be like this abortion rom-com, they called it, for this woman, Jenny Slate. She was in on SNL. She's like a comedian. She has a one-night stand, and she ends up having like an abortion. And it's weird. Like, it's weird because the acting it's Lifetime movie quality, but it was, it was supposed to be mainstream movie, but it was like this weird like commercial for Planned Parenthood, like in the middle. Like, it didn't even look right how they kind of cut in Planned Parenthood into this movie. So I'm sure Planned Parenthood funded a lot of the movie. What other movies can you think about how to have like a very obvious
Cider Rules?
Oh, yep, Cider House Rules. Yep.
It was an intentional propaganda film, but again,
yep,
it's so gross. And here's the reality: stories ring true or false. For the abortion industry trolls watching your show, I'm going to give you some advice. Don't try to make pro-abortion movies, because you can't. They'll never ring true.
That's right.
For them to ring true, they have to be sorrowful. All the movies on abortion that come out of Hollywood, so many of them that they call pro-life, were probably written by people trying to advocate for abortion. But in their own heart, when they write their own story, it will ring true. It will ring pro-life. Mm-hmm. So the only way to even me as a filmmaker, I don't want to make propaganda. We can never change a story to fit our ideology, right? In Crescendo, we didn't make Beethoven's dad. He didn't come home and say, honey, here's flowers. He called her an ugly slut, an ugly whore. And Bella, Nina didn't, have a bed of roses. She had a very sorrowful, hard life. Mm-hmm. So when you watch it, it rings true, and you want to tell the truth. Even when you're writing a story fiction, when you're doing narrative fiction, you want to reveal truth. There's no way you could do that. Maybe you make a film like Precious, where you just show someone in a really hard place, suffering abuse, suffering all sorts of hardship. But even then, I think the abortion would be just perceived as another abuse, another injustice on the woman suffering. So I just don't think they can do it. It's when they try. Even in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you're probably too young for that. Have you ever seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
I am too young for that.
Have you heard of it?
Yes, I have.
It's in the Smithsonian.
I'm not that young.
It's a Gen X classic.
Mm-hmm.
But when the young woman gets an abortion, Fast Times at Ridgemont High comes across as a pro-life movie. Yeah, because she goes, the guy that gets her pregnant, who's much older, asks how much the abortion is. And she goes, it's $600 at the free clinic. Like, this is the early 80s. And he goes, $600 doesn't sound free to me. So it's already hinting at the abortion industry is it's about money.
Abusing women.
Yeah.
There were two movies that came out recently. There was that Unpregnant movie that HBO put out of two teenage girls. I think they're in like Missouri. The one's pregnant and they travel to like New Mexico for like a late term abortion. There was a movie, I think it was on the mainstream. I don't know if it was on the screen or not, because like if it's not like a Disney movie that my kids are into, I wouldn't know. But it was Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Okay. And a girl goes to a pregnancy center. They basically, make fun of the pregnancy center for misleading her. And then she ends up having to travel from like rural PA to New York to get an abortion because she's a minor. And that was a mainstream film. I remember getting some media requests for that. So I haven't seen either one of those films. Have you seen those films yet?
Oh, I will make it. I didn't even hear the last one. So
there's your homework. Yeah. So you need to watch the abortion movie that I think about when I think about intentional movies to kind of promote abortion or abortion culture is Dirty Dancing, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. There, I'm all going to get all the hate mail comes. Dancing, Patrick Swayze. But yeah. Some of the students here probably who are listening, I have a very diverse audience for this podcast. So we have Students for Life leaders, we have supporters. So there's actually some generational divides.
Yeah.
But if you're in high school, you might have never heard it, but it is a really good movie, except for the abortion. But
well, I had a friend that was in a new remake of that who didn't want to do it because she was the character that had the abortion. And she asked me what I thought. And she actually was in the press saying that her pro-life friend talked her into doing it because she wasn't going to do it. And I said, let's do it. Just show the transformation of the character. Mm-hmm. We're not denying abortions happen. Mm-hmm. I think Dirty Dancing comes from an era where abortions were bat mitzvahs, that we were told they're a coming of age ritual when I was,
right.
That it's a grain of sand and a teaspoon of blood. And I think so Dirty Dancing comes from that era of naivete where most people probably really believed that abortion was a relatively simple procedure and there was no harm done to the woman physically or psychologically. So you're never going to get something that innocent again. I would say that, there's another powerful movie that talks about abortion from the same time, which was Officer and a Gentleman.
That's right. Okay.
Remember, she gets pregnant, and again, it comes from that kind of innocent period. He goes, "Why don't you tell her to get an abortion?" She can't. She won't. She's Catholic.
Yeah.
Also, The Godfather. So abortion pops up in a lot of films. In the 70s and 80s, there was more of a naivete and an innocence to it. But now we see it represented more accurately because I think the writers themselves have had abortions. And I think that's why for us, like watching this Never, Maybe, Sometimes, Always, I want to watch it. I have to imagine whoever was motivated to produce that and to write that was impacted by abortion. Like they can't say they weren't. Why are they writing it? Because abortion impacted them. And they weren't pre-Roe. They weren't impacted because they had to have a quote unquote kid. No, they were impacted because of their experience having an abortion. And so much I say in the pro-life movement, it's really a battle in this country. The battle is between those of us who have had abortions against those of us who've had abortions. You know, that's so much of the leadership in both of the movements. That's true. I want to know what they're feeling and what they're thinking. I want to understand how they've been impacted by their abortion.
That's absolutely true. And I think that's why you see sometimes, and we see this in the pro-life movement, those who've had abortions, you know, that's how when we're teaching students how to recognize post-abortion syndrome, because those who come out and scream at you and spit at you and curse at you, or if you're ever at the Supreme Court with us for a Supreme Court hearing or nomination of a pro-life Supreme Court justice, the Women's March, you will see that. And you know it's post-abortion syndrome, of this feeling of anybody saying anything negative against abortion is an attack on me, and I can't stand any divergent opinions about what I chose to do with my child, and why I chose abortion. All right, so let's go. We got a few minutes left. Give us your homework for us.
I didn't want you to shortchange me for the homework. Okay.
I know you've been dying for this, so let's go to your homework.
I wanted to do this just to tell you to watch these movies.
Okay.
So I'm gonna name all 6.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna name 3 producer directors to study. Okay. So here are the 6. Number 1 is Ridicule. Ridicule, it's a French film from I think 1996. You can only get it at the library. You're gonna have to spend $50, or you can ask me, I'll lend you mine, but you better give it back. Number 2 is Amazing Grace. Number 3 is Cyrano, the Gerard Depardieu Cyrano from the early 90s.
Spell that, please, because I don't know how to spell it.
And I'm going to come back to them. I just want to make sure we get them all out.
All right.
Cyrano is Cyrano.
Okay, I would have never spelled it that way. Glad you did that.
Here's the poster. See the poster?
Got it.
And look, there's the Ridicule poster. That's how serious I am. That's how much these movies influence me. That's not just for the show. They're always up there. Okay. Then Bella. We talked about Bella. Number 5, Jojo Rabbit. You must watch Jojo Rabbit. And then number 6 is A Hidden Life. Now, when you watch A Hidden Life by Terrence Malick, it's going to be a double feature. I want you to watch A Hidden Life first, then I want you to watch Casablanca, because they're actually the same movie, just 2 different styles of filmmaking. And for those of you who have seen both, you're thinking I'm crazy. Watch them again, and you're going to see I'm a genius, okay? Now, the three filmmakers I want you to study are Taika Waititi. You must watch every film by Taika Waititi, all right? Not just Thor Ragnarok. Boy, you got to watch Boy, okay? You have to watch Hunt for the Wilder People, but you got to watch Jojo Rabbit first. Number 2 is Terrence Malick. The reason I want you to watch Taika Waititi, by the way, in all of his films, is because he's Maori and he's Jewish, and he has this brilliant sense of life. He has a great use of humor in a very Polynesian way. When you watch his movies, there's it's whimsical and gentle in a way that is Polynesian humor. Terrence Malick, it's his sense of the transcendent, of God being transcendent, and the role of the human person in creation. All of his films, To the Wonder, beautiful film, and Tree of Life. So you should watch all of Terrence Malick's films. And then the third is Mel Gibson. You should study Mel Gibson's films from Gallipoli all the way to Hacksaw Ridge. What you're going to see in all of his films, Gallipoli, The Passion, Braveheart, The Patriot, Hacksaw Ridge, is that violence is repulsive. What I love about Mel Gibson's films is they say his films are so violent. No. Apocalypto, his films aren't violent, any more or less violent than a James Bond movie.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't make violence attractive. As pro-life activists, we're repulsed by violence to the innocent, violence to the vulnerable, violence to the human person. Nobody does a better job of showing that violence is not attractive, violence is ugly, than Mel Gibson. Okay. So now I got my list out. How much time do we have to go through these movies?
You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Let's do Ridicule first.
All right, Ridicule. It's French. Does there subtitles?
There's subtitles.
Okay.
And I saw this when I was in college, I think my senior year. I was the type of student, I founded the Pro-Life Student Union, and we didn't have all the great resources you have today. Sort of out there on my own in Hawaii, writing letters and begging pro-life groups to send me stuff. And they would get mad at me because you just asked last month. And I'm like, yeah, I gave it all away. Those were different times. And I was the type of person that everyone I met, I would try to argue with about abortion using logic and debate and apologetics. I was a TA, a logic TA, and I would, but then I saw this film Ridicule, and it was about a young nobleman in France leading up to the French Revolution, who was also an engineer, who had developed a way to drain his swamps because his peasants were dying of malaria, and he goes to Versailles with his plans. That's how I was. I had all these plans. I'm going to tell everyone, this is how I'm going to end abortion. I'm going to do this, then this, then that. Here are my plans. And their eyes would glaze over. That's what this nobleman did. He goes to Versailles with his plans. His eyes glaze over. He gives up on getting the money because he realizes it's just about partying and relationships. And if you see on the poster, it says, wit is the ultimate weapon. Can you see the poster?
Mm-hmm.
Wit is the ultimate weapon. So he goes back home and his favorite peasant boy dies. So he goes back to Versailles, resolved to get the money by playing the game, by doing what he needed to do to get the money, not by laying out his grand scheme and how he was going to drain swamps and and all of this technology he had developed as an engineer. He was going to befriend people. And I remember I saw this film and it was just like a light bulb went off and I said, okay, I wouldn't have used this term at the time, but a Catholic expression would be the apostolate of friendship. That I'm going to build relationships and use those relationships and leverage those relationships to defend the vulnerable from violence. Not that I would go so far as using people as a means to an end, but that people were the end. And building authentic relationships with folks that agree with you or don't agree with you. Along the way, play the game. I have to oftentimes be out till 6 o'clock in the morning, schmoozing people, whether I'm in Washington, D.C. or Hollywood. I'm building relationships, investing in friendships, but that's how I do my mission. And I think it's something very important for those of us who are activists to learn. So that's why I love Ridicule. I think every young activist should watch it. Some of the things that you think are inhibiting you from your pro-life work, like tennis, or you're on the football team or whatever, are actually where you do the pro-life work.
Wow.
Right? Your tennis team, your football team, your band, whatever little tribes you belong to. This morning, first thing in the morning, I went to the boxing gym. Trust me, every young man in a boxing gym that trains with me is going to be pro-life in 8 weeks. I never bring it up. They follow me on social media. They'll watch my interviews. They'll start reading articles and they start messaging me. Time after time after time, this happens. And so it's through relationships. That's how we influence. And so I think that's why I love the movie Ridicule.
All right, you sold me. I wrote it down. I'm going to watch it. What about number 2?
Oh, look bored. Okay. Number 2.
No, you told me. I wrote it down. It's on my to-do list. I've added it to my to-do list.
Is Amazing Grace. I would do a double. I said Malcolm X is a double feature with that. Also, maybe The Searchers with John Wayne. The Searchers. What I love about The Searchers with John Wayne.
Never heard of it.
It's John Wayne and this young man are off to rescue a woman who had been kidnapped by the Comanche, and the journey takes a lot longer than they would expect, but they don't quit. We're around a lot of folks, Kristan, that I pejoratively call tourists. They show up, they make a lot of noise, they act like they own the place, they tell everyone what to do, and they leave. Then they spend the rest of their life saying that they could have ended abortion, but we're knuckleheads. No, it's not that easy, right? It's a lifetime of work and fortitude. And so you get that from The Searchers, and you get that from Amazing Grace as well. So do a 3-movie, Amazing Grace, Malcolm X, and The Searchers. Okay, number 3
What's the one I can't pronounce? One's behind you.
Oh, Ridicule?
No, the other one behind you. Cyrano.
That movie right there, guys. Come on. Look at there. There's Cyrano de Bergerac. It's a play. Maybe many of you have read the play, but don't watch the American or English versions of the play, and or Anglos, we don't get Cyrano. You have to watch a French film, and I would say watch the Gerard Depardieu version. What I love about Cyrano is it's really one of the greatest love stories ever told. And you may watch it and go, why is Jason making us watch this? But it goes back to what William Wilberforce said, that we're too young to know. What is it? We're too young to know it can't be done.
Yeah. We're too young to know what's impossible to do.
Cyrano says when he's fighting death, which is what we're fighting, death says to him, don't you know it's useless to fight me? And Cyrano says, far better that the odds be totally in vain. Man fights for far more than the mere hope of winning. And that's right. What I like about Cyrano for young people, for students, is it gives you a sense of life. What's interesting is I discovered him in 8th grade, the play. The movie came out later. So many people that I love and respect in film or in politics, I find out they also had sort of a devotion to the play, Cyrano. So it's just a spiritedness, a sense of life, courage, joy. And, another thing is that we're surrounded by people that are conforming to the spirit of the age.
Yeah.
And as we follow the ridicule method, those of you who are young and seek to gain influence and positions of influence, whether in politics or film or whatever your vocation is, if you seek to do that, you will do that. But the closer you get to your goals, the more the sort of mimetic desire to conform becomes very powerful. And Cyrano is like a rejection of conformity to the norms of society, because you're conforming yourself to something transcendent. In a way, he's like a secular saint. He's the guy with the big nose. Don't watch Roxanne. Watch Cyrano.
Okay, watch it. All right, and then what's the other one I didn't know? Hidden Life, I know because that's new. Casablanca, I've never watched it, but everyone I think generally knows about that. What about this Jojo the Rabbit? What the heck is that?
Jojo Rabbit. You've got to watch Jojo Rabbit today.
Okay. All right.
You have to watch.
I'm just not as cool as you. Let's just be very clear.
Boy. Okay, so Jojo Rabbit, can I tell you what it's about? And then you're going to go,
I've been watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer reruns, so this is where I'm at.
By the way, didn't Diablo write for them? I think Diablo Cody wrote for Buffy.
That would make sense. I mean, it's very much like a teen angst thing.
And I think there's a pro-life episode she wrote for Buffy, but I could be wrong. Okay, so Jojo Rabbit. First of all, let me set the stage. It was written by Taika Waititi, who's Jewish and Maori. It's about a little boy who is in the Hitler Youth, and he wants to be the very best Nazi he can be. And his imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler, played by Taika Waititi. So you're like, why are you telling us to watch this film? It sounds crazy. This film is so beautiful because what Taika does is he makes a young boy who's in the Hitler Youth a hero, and a sympathetic hero. A young boy that's been seduced by the ideology of his age. That's a brutal ideology. But you look into this boy's heart, and he actually got criticized for making this film. It's unbelievable. You should Google around. I looked at some of the reviews. In this age of cancel culture, and for those of us who are pro-life as well, why I think it's important is ideologies of evil are very powerful. People we love all around us conform, right? They conform to these ideologies of evil that are dehumanizing. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means it's really hard not to conform to the spirit of the age. And so that's one reason to watch this film. The other reason is he has such a memory for what it is to be a child. And it's very whimsical. It's very kind. It's very serious. There's a scene in there. It's one of the hardest scenes to watch in Hollywood history. A very, very painful scene. It's just such a beautiful film. But then in the midst of it all is a celebration of freedom. That freedom will never be extinguished. That the human spirit can never be crushed. And even in the midst of this tyranny, one of the icons of freedom in the film is the Hitler Youth teacher, who is really rebelling against the regime in his own way. It's a very clever film. And again, I would watch all of Taika's films. I would watch Jojo Rabbit, then I would watch Boy, then I would watch Hunt for the Wilder People. But really, Jojo Rabbit is up there with my favorite films. And again, it's with A Hidden Life. Now, A Hidden Life, you need to drink coffee, watch it at 10 a.m. It's a Terrence Malick film. But it's about a young Austrian farmer, married, children, who refuses to say a loyalty oath to Hitler after the Germans annexed Austria. Even though his bishop, it's a true story. The hero of the film, Franz Jägerstätter, is now a blessed in the Catholic Church on his way to canonization. But he refused to say the loyalty oath. My wife refuses to watch it because she knows with my work, and I'm doing a project in Yemen right now and other parts of the world, that she doesn't like it that I travel to. I really want her to watch it because his wife is very supportive of him up until the point he dies. But again, it's another film that all of us are constantly being drawn to conform to the spirit of the age. And this is about A Hidden Life, is about this hero. Let me tell you my favorite scene. There's an artist that's touching up the icons in the church. And Franz is talking to the artist, and he says, he's admiring his work. And the artist says, really, we want to make saints through our work, but at the end of the day, all we make is admirers of saints. One day, I would like to make a work of art that inspires others to become saints. I believe this was Terrence Malick sort of confessing that his films, in a way, are icons, that he would hope that he too could be like Franz to stand up to such an evil to this point. So it's sort of, I believe, Terrence Malick is breaking the wall, talking directly to us in a way. It's the writer is talking to us, or revealing a secret to us that all of us have, right? That we all hope that in the face of death or danger, that we would still maintain our convictions. So A Hidden Life is awesome. And again, watch it with Casablanca, because Rick, in many ways, is like Franz. He owns he owns a bar, Rick's Cafe, and little casino there in Casablanca. So you're saying, what does Rick have to do with Franz? Well, there were two men standing up to a horrible ideology and refusing to conform. So to me, Casablanca is actually so much more, it's a popular film, where Terrence Malick's films, they're not everyone's cup of tea, although he's my favorite director.
All right, so now I know what I'm doing the next 2-3 weekends is watching all of these films. I've been Googling them as you've been talking. This is a great list of homework. Thank you, Jason, for coming on today. And I hope this conversation that we've had on today's podcast has been helpful for you and kind of picking out some movies that your Students for Life group or your Right to Life group can watch, have discussions, invite some of those folks on the fence, some people maybe you've been having conversations with who wouldn't normally come to a pro-life group meeting, who will join you, that will open up that dialogue that you need, kind of break through and use the power of storytelling, of filmmaking, of personal experience, and real life emotion to really start to challenge some of your friends or family members' beliefs on abortion. And we also have our own homework for us for how to feed ourselves and for us to continue on in this work and not to be tourists, but to be here for the long haul and to truly be that pro-life generation and to live out and fulfill our life's calling to end abortion in a lifetime. So Jason, thanks for joining today. How can everyone follow what you're doing at Movie to Movement, the movies that you're doing, your podcast? Where can everyone get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, you go to movietomovement.com. You can see our new movie, Divided Hearts of America, starring Benjamin Watson. It is a beautiful, powerful documentary that has the secret that can unite America right now. So go to movietomovement.com for that. And my podcast is The Jason Jones Show, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Your show's so popular, you have a corporate sponsor now. You have somebody.
Go to mypillow.com, get your Christmas presents, use the code Jones for pillows, Mattress toppers. Yeah, we have corporate sponsors lining up. We're picking and choosing.
Your podcast is just kicking my podcast ass, apparently, because I don't have any corporate sponsors.
You know what you should use? You should do My Pillow spots and use the code Jones. Just tell people the code Jones.
Go. Yeah, there you go. I'll get right on it. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for guys tuning in. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I don't know why you haven't, and spread the word about the Explicitly Pro Life podcast. See you next week. Bye.